Imagine a young boy from a small island in the Mediterranean, not born into great wealth, nor as an heir to a throne, just a child of minor nobility caught between rebellion and empire. That boy's name was Napoleon Bonaparte. He was born on August 15, 1769, in Ajaccio, on the island of Corsica, only months after the French had taken the island from the Genoese. The Bonaparte family, though of noble blood, lived modestly and with quiet resentment toward French rule. But Napoleon's father, Carlo, chose to align with the new French regime. Why? To open doors for his children, especially this clever, determined son. At the age of 9, Napoleon was sent to mainland France, enrolled in a military academy at Brienne. There he was mocked for his accent, his origins, his strange name. But behind the taunts, Napoleon buried himself in books. He read about Julius Caesar, Hannibal, Alexander the Great, and in silence he vowed to rise. Then came the French Revolution in 1789, a time of chaos, blood, and the fall of monarchies. It was also a time of opportunity. At just 24 years old, Napoleon led French forces to crush a royalist uprising in Toulon. He was promoted to brigadier general overnight, but it was in Paris in 1795 where his legend truly began. Another royalist revolt threatened the government, and Napoleon was called to act. With just a few well-placed cannons, he cleared the streets in a single afternoon. The new French government, called the Directory, hailed him as a hero. The public saw him as a savior. In 1798, Napoleon set out on an ambitious campaign to Egypt, not just to strike at British interests, but to claim his place in history. He brought with him not only soldiers, but scientists, engineers, and scholars. Though his navy was destroyed by the British in the Battle of the Nile, he returned home a hero, not a failure. His control of narrative was just as sharp as his command in battle. Upon his return in 1799, France was crumbling under political instability. Napoleon seized the moment. In a swift coup d'etat, known as the 18th Brumaire, he took control of the government. He became first consul. 5 years later, he crowned himself Emperor of the French in a ceremony so grand, even the Pope was reduced to a witness. In a bold act of symbolism, Napoleon placed the crown on his own head, declaring he owed his throne to no one. As emperor, he was not just a conqueror, he was a reformer. He introduced the Napoleonic Code, a legal framework still influential today. He restructured education, founded the Bank of France, and centralized administration. Yet his greatest stage was not the courtroom, it was the battlefield. Between 1805 and 1811, Napoleon defeated Austria, Prussia, and Russia. His victory at Austerlitz is still studied in military academies today. He redrew the map of Europe, installing his relatives as kings and dukes. From Spain to Poland, Europe seemed to bend under his will. But one enemy refused to kneel: Britain. To weaken the British economy, Napoleon launched the Continental System, a massive trade blockade. But it backfired. Resistance grew. Nationalism stirred across Europe. And then came his most disastrous decision: the invasion of Russia. In 1812, he led over 600,000 men into the Russian Empire. But the Russians burned everything: food, shelter, entire cities, leaving nothing but cold, empty land. As winter closed in, his army starved and froze. By the time they retreated, fewer than 100,000 remained. The myth of invincibility was shattered. Across Europe, former allies turned into enemies. One by one, the coalitions closed in. In 1814, Paris was taken. Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the tiny island of Elba. But the story wasn't over. Less than a year later, he escaped. With just 1,000 men, he landed on the southern coast of France. Soldiers sent to arrest him joined his side instead. As he marched north, city after city welcomed him. The king fled. The people rejoiced. For 100 days, Napoleon ruled again. But the rest of Europe would not make the same mistake twice. On June 18, 1815, at a small village in Belgium called Waterloo, Napoleon met his final defeat at the hands of the British and Prussians. He surrendered for the last time and was sent into permanent exile, this time to St. Helena, a remote island in the middle of the South Atlantic. There, far from power and glory, He dictated his memoirs, crafting the legend of Napoleon for future generations. He died on May 5, 1821, alone, age 51. Some say it was cancer. Others whisper of poison. What's certain is that even in death, his shadow loomed large. Today, Napoleon remains one of history's most debated figures. To some, a tyrant. To others, a visionary. He was a revolutionary and a dictator, a lawgiver and a warmonger. He reshaped the modern world and forced nations to reckon with the power of one man's ambition. As Napoleon himself once said, history is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon. But one thing is undeniable: Napoleon Bonaparte changed the world.